When I walked back into my own house after 6 weeks of sleeping in my car, I didn't even recognize it. My clothes were gone from the closet. My posters were replaced with live, laugh, love signs. And there was a suitcase sitting on my bed that wasn't mine. At first, I thought maybe my cousin Tyler had decided to do some spring cleaning. I called his name, no answer. Then I heard someone humming in the bathroom. A woman stepped out in a towel and froze when she saw me. "Oh my God, are you the host?" she asked. That's when it hit me. My cousin had listed my room on Airbnb. I was so stunned I didn't even speak. She said she'd booked the private room with free parking and friendly dog. My dog, Luna. The same Luna who should have been with me, but Tyler had insisted he'd take care of her while I got back on my feet. I rushed to the backyard and found Luna in her crate, shaking, tail tucked, surrounded by her own waste. Her food bowl was dry. Her water bowl was algae green. My chest felt like it was splitting open. When Tyler finally walked in, he looked more confused than guilty. "Whoa, dude, what are you doing here?" Like I was the intruder. I didn't answer. I just asked, "What the hell is going on?" He shrugged, smirking. "You said you'd be gone for a while. I just made use of the space. You should be thanking me, actually. I paid the utilities with the Airbnb money." I stood there shaking, holding Luna, and all I could think about was how many strangers had slept in my bed while I was eating gas station food and washing up at Planet Fitness. But what really burned me was the way he laughed when I said he'd abused my dog. "Relax, man. She's fine. You're so dramatic." He turned and started talking to the guest like I was the crazy one. "Sorry about that, he just came back early from his big Euro trip," he said, chuckling. My mind froze. Euro trip? Apparently, he'd told everyone I was traveling through Europe and letting him manage the Airbnb for me. He'd even posted fake Instagram stories using my old pictures. That night, I slept in my car again. Not because I didn't have a home, but because I couldn't even look at him. And as I sat there scrolling through the Airbnb listing, photos of my room, my things, even Luna in the background of one picture, I started to realize how many guests had stayed there. Dozens. Maybe more. So I did something that Tyler never thought I'd have the guts to do. I opened Airbnb, and I started messaging every single person who had ever stayed in my room. I didn't know yet what it would lead to, but I knew one thing. Tyler's smug little empire was about to collapse. Tyler wasn't just my cousin. He was practically my brother. We grew up together in Glendale, Arizona, because our moms were sisters and best friends. He was always the charming one. Smooth talker, always had a plan, always knew a guy. I was quieter, the one who worked steady jobs and never took big risks. When I lost my apartment last year, rent went up, my hours got cut at the auto shop. Tyler was the first to offer help. "You can crash at my place, dude. We'll figure it out," he said. I thought it was family stepping up for family. For a few months, it was fine. We split groceries, I helped fix his car, and we'd watch old UFC fights together. But then his attitude started changing. He started hinting that I should get my life together or start contributing more. I offered rent money, but he brushed it off and just acted resentful anyway. One night, we got into an argument, stupid one, about my dog, Luna. She was a rescue, a sweet pit mix I'd had since college. He said she shed too much, that she made the house smell like wet socks. I told him if she bothered him that much, I'd find another place soon. The next morning, he was all smiles, like nothing happened. He even made pancakes. I thought it was over. 2 weeks later, I got a job offer in Tucson. It was just a contract gig. Not permanent, but it paid enough to maybe save up and get my own place. Tyler offered to watch Luna while I worked and said, "No worries, bro. I got you. She'll be treated like royalty." The plan was, I'd drive back on weekends, see Luna, maybe crash on the couch if needed. But the first weekend I tried to come back, Tyler said he was having plumbing issues and told me to stay put. Then the next weekend, he said his girlfriend's family was visiting and the house was packed. I didn't push it, I trusted him. I even Venmo'd him $100 every week to help with her food and care. When my contract ended 6 weeks later, I called him to say I was heading home. He didn't answer. Then he texted, "Cool, bro. Just give me a heads up first. Got some stuff going on here." That was weird. But I drove back anyway. I figured he just didn't want to clean up before I showed up. Instead, I came home to find strangers in my bed and my dog wasting away in a crate. And the part that really broke me wasn't just what he did. It was how easily he lied about it. Like he'd planned it from the start. Because later that night, as I sat in my car scrolling through his Airbnb messages, I found something worse than I expected. He'd been running that listing for months, even before I left for Tucson. And there was one message thread that made my blood run cold. A guest complaining about the dog barking all day while they were out. That meant Luna had been locked up the entire time. I started taking screenshots, dozens of them. Every review, every message, every receipt. Because I didn't just want him to pay me back. I wanted him to face what he'd done. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in my car with Luna curled up beside me, going through every Airbnb message and photo like evidence at a crime scene. The listing had 47 reviews. That meant 47 different strangers had slept in my bed. Some had even taken selfies in my room and tagged the location. He'd called it, "Cozy Private Room near downtown Phoenix. Host, Tyler and Company." The "and Company" was apparently me. Each review felt like a punch in the gut. Host was friendly and communicative. The room was super clean. Loved the dog. Hope to stay again when I'm back in town. I started putting the pieces together. The clean bedding I'd bought, the missing laundry detergent, the sudden rise in the electric bill that he'd complained about. He'd been making hundreds, maybe thousands, off my stuff while I was scraping change for gas. And all that time, he'd been telling my family that I was traveling through Europe, working remotely. My aunt even texted me once, "So proud of you. Saw your photos in Paris. Amazing." I hadn't posted those. He had. He'd taken my old college trip photos and recycled them, posting them on his story every few days like some twisted alibi. When I confronted him the next morning, he was sitting at the kitchen table eating cereal, scrolling through his phone like nothing had happened. "Why?" I asked. My voice cracked. He looked up, shrugged, and said, "You were gone. You didn't say when you were coming back. I just made it work." "Made it work," I said. "You sold my room, Tyler. You left my dog locked up and told people I was living some fantasy life in Europe." He rolled his eyes. "Dude, calm down. You're being dramatic." I kept her fed. "Okay? She's fine." And the guests were respectful. "I even changed your sheets between stays." I could barely breathe. I told him I was moving my stuff out that day. He just said, "Good luck finding a place that'll take a dog right now. But sure, go ahead." I loaded everything I could into my car and left. But as I was about to drive away, I saw him in the driveway on his phone, laughing. When I checked Airbnb again, I saw why. He had already relisted my room. Available starting next week. That's when something inside me broke. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't even pretending to be. He thought I'd just vanish quietly, that I'd be too broke or embarrassed to do anything. He didn't know I had screenshots of every guest's name and contact info, so I decided to tell the truth. Not just to Airbnb, but to every person who had unknowingly stayed in my home while my dog starved in a cage. I started writing the messages that night. Short, factual, but sharp. "Hey, this is actually the person who owns the room you rented from Tyler. Just wanted to let you know it wasn't his to rent. Also, my dog was being neglected during your stay." I sent the first 10 messages before passing out in the driver's seat. By the time I woke up, there were replies waiting, and one of them was about to change everything. The first message I opened the next morning came from a woman named Megan. She'd stayed there for 2 weeks while visiting her boyfriend in Phoenix. Her tone was polite at first, but then her texts kept coming faster. "Wait, are you saying that wasn't his house? He told me it belonged to his cousin who was traveling abroad for work. He said you gave him permission." Then she added a photo, and my heart just stopped. It was of Tyler and her together, sitting on my couch, holding a beer each. Luna was in the background, asleep in her crate. Megan wrote, "He said you were some spoiled dude living off family money and that he was helping you out. He told me not to touch any of your stuff. I felt sick, but it got worse. She sent me a screenshot of a text thread between them months old. In it, he bragged about making bank off the Airbnb thing and called me a lazy loser who'd never notice. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. But then she sent one more message. By the way, I think you should know he's been listing other rooms too. Not just yours. That didn't make sense. My house only had 2 bedrooms. So I opened Airbnb again, and this time I searched for Tyler and Company. There were 3 listings. One was my old room, the cozy private room. Another was listed as a studio suite. And the third one made my stomach flip. Full home rental with pet-friendly yard. It was my entire house. He had listed the whole property under his name using my photos. He'd even uploaded a fake lease agreement to prove he was authorized. Couldn't believe it. He hadn't just lied, he'd stolen my identity. He was pretending to be me. And that's when I realized Tyler didn't just make use of the space. He had fully taken over my life. When I called him, he didn't answer. Then he texted, "You're seriously out of control. Don't contact my guests. You're just making things worse for yourself. Your guests." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Not yet. Because within hours, messages started pouring in from past guests who were furious. A few said they'd left bad reviews and reported him to Airbnb. One even called the city's housing department to report illegal short-term rentals. But then came the one message that changed everything. It was from someone named Jay. No profile picture, no last name. The message just said, "Hey, I think we need to talk about Tyler. He's not who you think he is." I hesitated. Something about it felt different, not like the other guests. So I asked, "Who are you?" The reply came a few minutes later. "Let's just say, I've been renting from him too, but not through Airbnb." I stared at that line for a long time, trying to understand what it meant. Then Jay sent me a photo of a rental agreement with my address on it. And the signature at the bottom? Tyler's. Except he hadn't signed it as himself. He'd signed it as me. I sat in the driver's seat staring at that fake lease for a long time, my hands going numb around my phone. Tyler had forged my name. He'd literally become me on paper, renting out my home to strangers, taking money under my name, and leaving my dog locked up like garbage. When Jay called, his voice was low, uneasy. "Man, I didn't know any of this. He told me you moved overseas and he was managing the property for you. I paid him $3,000 up front. $3,000. For my place. I asked him to forward everything, receipts, texts, bank transfers. He did. Tyler had been running a full-blown rental scam for months, making thousands while I was sleeping in parking lots. And it wasn't just Jay. When I dug deeper, I found posts on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist. My address, my photos, even a description that said, "Private home managed by family on behalf of the owner abroad." He'd been using my dog in the photos, writing things like, "Friendly house pet included." That was the moment I stopped crying and started planning. First step, evidence. I organized every screenshot, text, message, and Airbnb receipt into folders by date. I even printed out photos showing Luna's neglect. I wanted to make sure that when this blew up, there'd be no misunderstanding to hide behind. Second, I called Airbnb support. They were cautious at first, saying they needed verification that I was the property owner. I sent them everything, my ID, the deed, utility bills. Within an hour, all of Tyler's listings were frozen, pending investigation. That should have been satisfying, but I wasn't done. Because Tyler still had those direct renters. He was still pretending to be me. And if I didn't stop him fast, some unsuspecting person would move in thinking they were renting from me, and he'd pocket more cash. So I set a trap. Using a fake Facebook account, I messaged him about his house for rent. I said I was moving to Phoenix for work and looking for something pet-friendly. Within minutes, he replied, "Perfect timing. The place just opened up. It's a great spot. Safe, quiet, landlords out of the country." He sent me my own photos. I played along, asked about price, availability, utilities. He said he could meet that weekend to show the property. I told him that would work. Then I started making calls, first to a lawyer I knew from my old job, then to animal control, and finally to a detective in the Phoenix PD fraud unit. They told me to gather proof of identity theft and property misuse, basically everything I'd already done. By the time Saturday came, I had a binder of evidence and 3 people ready to go. The detective, an animal welfare officer, and Jay, who'd agreed to be there as a witness. The plan was simple. Tyler thought he was meeting a new tenant for a rental showing. Instead, he was about to walk into a sting. And the best part? I'd be there too, hidden in plain sight, watching him realize his little empire was over. But what I didn't know, what none of us knew yet, was that Tyler had one last lie up his sleeve. One that would twist everything I thought I understood about why he did it. Saturday came hot and blinding. One of those Phoenix mornings where the air feels like it's vibrating. I parked a block away from the house, watching through the windshield as Tyler pulled up in his beat-up Tacoma. He was grinning, sunglasses on, holding a clipboard, looking every bit the property manager he thought he was. He didn't see me. I was with the detective, a quiet woman named Ruiz, who was calm and methodical. We'd arranged for Jay to pose as the new tenant, while an animal control officer waited nearby to check on Luna. Tyler unlocked the front door and walked in with Jay, bragging about the recent upgrades. I could hear his voice faintly through the cracked window, confident, casual, like he'd done this 100 times. Detective Ruiz nodded once, then walked up to the door. "Phoenix PD," she said, showing her badge. "We need to talk about this property." At first, he looked confused, that smug, slow blink he always did when he didn't understand the rules of the game. Then his face hardened. "I think there's been a mistake," he said. "This is my cousin's house. He's traveling overseas. I manage it for him." Ruiz turned slightly, motioning me forward. When he saw me step out from behind her, his whole body froze. "Hey, Tyler," I said. My voice shook, but I didn't care. "How's the hosting business?" For a few seconds, he just stood there staring, like he couldn't compute that I was real. Then he tried to laugh it off. "Bro, what is this? Some kind of joke?" Ruiz didn't laugh. She asked him for ID. He handed it over with shaky hands. She asked if he had permission to rent the house. He said yes, that we had an informal agreement. I held up the binder, lease agreements, Airbnb listings, fake posts, and screenshots of my forged signature. "Informal, huh?" That's when his composure cracked. He turned to Ruiz and said, "You don't get it. He gave me permission. He just doesn't remember. He's unstable. Unstable." He was trying to spin me as the crazy one, right in front of the cops. Ruiz didn't buy it. She told him to sit down. Animal control came in next, checked on Luna. She was trembling but alive. They took photos, documented everything. Should have been over. But when they ran his name in the system, Ruiz's face changed. She stepped outside to make a call. When she came back, she looked at me first. "You might want to sit down," she said. Turns out this wasn't his first scam. Not even close. Tyler had been under quiet investigation for months for rental fraud across the state. Fake listings, duplicate ads, false documents, dozens of victims. And guess whose name he'd been using on almost all of them? Mine. He'd opened bank accounts, registered fake emails, even used my old phone number. Everything pointed back to me. That's why he'd kept me away so long. Not just to rent my room, but to keep me out of sight while he used my identity. He looked right at me then, eyes cold, no smirk left. "You think you're the victim here?" he muttered. "You have no idea what I've done for you." Ruiz cuffed him before I could respond. And as they let him out, he turned his head and said quietly, "You'll thank me one day." It wasn't a threat. It was worse, it was sincere. Like he believed it. And that's what chilled me most. Because I suddenly realized this wasn't about greed. It was about control. I didn't understand what he meant. "You'll thank me one day." It replayed in my head like a riddle that didn't make sense. But a week later, when Detective Ruiz called me back in to give a full statement, I finally found out what he was talking about. They dug into his accounts, his messages, his entire fake rental network. It turned out he hadn't been using my name randomly. He'd been building a whole identity around it. Fake utilities, driver's license renewal under my address, even a bank account in my name that had been open for months. When Ruiz slid the folder across the table, I saw my own name printed on dozens of deposits. Tyler using my identity to wash his money through me. He'd been setting me up to take the fall. Every fake lease, every scam listing, every Venmo receipt, all under my name. If one of his tenants ever filed a complaint or a report, it would have landed on me. And I wouldn't have been able to prove otherwise because on paper, I looked like the guy running a bunch of shady Airbnb scams. It wasn't a side hustle. It was a long con. Your cousin wasn't just making quick cash, Ruiz said quietly. He was erasing himself, using you as a front. He's done this before with his dad, an ex-girlfriend, even an old roommate. You were just the easiest to manipulate. I felt my throat tighten. Why me? She sighed. Because you trusted him. Because you always would. And she was right. I'd let him stay with me in college when he got kicked out. I covered his car insurance when he lost his job. When I was younger, I used to idolize him. Thought he was fearless, funny, someone who could talk his way into or out of anything. But that charm I admired? It was a weapon. The real twist came when Ruiz told me what he'd said during interrogation. He claims he was helping you, she said. He says he did it because you were wasting your life, and he wanted to force you to get it together. I laughed when she said that, but it came out broken. Helping me? He made me homeless. She nodded. Yeah, that's the cruelty of it. He genuinely believes he made you stronger. Apparently, he told her I was too soft, that I needed to be shaken awake. He said letting me lose everything would toughen me up, that he'd even kept the dog alive as some sort of test of responsibility. It was control disguised as guidance, punishment dressed up as love. And what really messed with me? The way he'd talked about me to others, always like I was his project. He'd told people he helped his cousin get his life back on track, that he was handling things while I found myself abroad. In his mind, he wasn't stealing from me, he was rewriting me. That's the kind of evil that doesn't shout or threaten. It smiles. It laughs. It tells you it's for your own good while it's cutting your legs out from under you. When Ruiz finished explaining, she said, "You should know. This case will take time. But if you want, you can submit a victim impact statement. It'll go on record." I nodded, but I wasn't thinking about court. I was thinking about the way he smirked that day, calling me dramatic, talking over me like I didn't exist. He'd wanted control. Now, I was going to take that control back. Publicly, permanently, and in a way that would make sure everyone knew what he really was. I didn't want to just watch him get quietly processed through the system, maybe get a slap on the wrist and disappear again. Tyler thrived on silence, on people being too ashamed or too confused to speak up. I wasn't giving him that gift. I started with the evidence folder. I turned it into a public timeline. I posted it on a local Facebook community page under my real name with every fake listing, every forged document, every screenshot of Luna in her crate. I wrote exactly what happened. How my cousin stole my identity, lied that I was traveling Europe, and rented out my room while I was sleeping in my car. The post blew up overnight. Thousands of shares. Comments from people who'd seen those same listings. A few even recognized him. He tried to rent their places too. Someone tagged a local news reporter. 2 days later, the story hit the evening segment. Valley man scammed by his own cousin in Airbnb scheme. His face was on TV. His fake listings were listed one by one. I didn't have to embellish a thing. And as the story spread, something wild happened. Other victims came forward. Not just locals. People from Flagstaff, Prescott, even San Diego. Same story. He'd used a different name, same pitch, same photos. They all filed reports. The detective called me a week later. "You just made our case bulletproof," she said. "He's looking at felony counts of identity theft, fraud, and animal neglect." It still didn't feel like enough. Not until I went back to the house to get Luna's things. That's where I saw the last piece of him. His old laptop, shoved under the couch. I opened it and found folders of fake IDs, copied leases, and hundreds of messages between him and the people he'd scammed. But what stopped me was the document titled Project Phoenix. Inside were notes about me. Unmotivated, codependent, needs a push, goal, force independence, even through controlled collapse. That's what he'd called it, controlled collapse. He thought he was playing God with my life. So I printed that too, and when I made my victim statement in court, I read his own words aloud. I looked him dead in the eye while the judge listened. He called it a project, I said. He called destroying my life an experiment. But I lived it, and now I'm ending it. He didn't smirk that time. He just stared at the floor. He got 5 years in state prison. I got Luna back, and a house that finally felt like mine again. I repainted my room, threw out every sheet that had ever touched a stranger, and took the door off Luna's crate for good. Sometimes, late at night, I still scroll past old photos of us as kids, laughing, arms around each other. It used to make me angry. Now it just reminds me how blind I was. The last message I ever sent him was short. You wanted to teach me independence. Congratulations. I learned. And then I blocked his number. Because revenge isn't always fire and chaos. Sometimes it's silence, the kind that means they don't get to exist in your world anymore. That's how I got my life back. That's how I closed the door on Project Phoenix.